guys, it's Jordan and welcome back to my channel. You did not read that title incorrectly. Yes, this is in fact my April reading wrap-up. I was getting ready to do my May reading wrap-up and I was looking on my channel and I was like, oh, I never did one for April. Oops. I read 8 books in April, so let's just go ahead and get right on into the video. The first book that I read was Roomies by Christina Lauren. This is a standalone novel from these two ladies. They also wrote one of my favorite series, which is the Wild Seasons series. I did a whole video on that and I'll link it up above if you want to check it out. They always tend to write books about relationship tropes that I love so much. And in this one, we have the trope of two people faking a relationship for the benefit of one or the other. We have a young girl who is working in a studio, like in a, not a studio, a theater. And she's been kind of stalking, in a way, this subway musician. And she thinks he'll be the perfect addition to her uncle's play to replace this musician who left. So she gets him an audition, but the problem is that he is in the States illegally. They decide to fake a relationship and get married, and then in the process they're going through all these interrogation questions and interviews. It reminded me a lot of The Proposal, which is one of my favorite movies. One thing that I really felt was missing from this book was some of the heat and passion and like emotion that they did so well in the Wild Seasons series. I think part of that was because we only got Holland's point of view, and I think if we would have had Calvin's point of view as well, it would have really amped up the emotion and the like passionness of this. What? If they would have done that, I think it would have taken away from like the big twist at the end. However, with that aside, even though it wasn't as gut-wrenching as I was hoping it would be, I still really enjoyed this and I love their books and I highly recommend anything that I've read from Christina Lauren. I haven't been disappointed by one of their books yet, and I ended up giving Roomies a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I picked up was Unearthed by Amie Kaufman and Meagan. This is the first book in a new duology from these ladies. They also wrote These Broken Stars. It's a sci-fi novel. Our main characters are both from Earth, but like Earth is completely destroyed. We mastered the art of space traveling, and so we traveled all these different planets to gain resources. So this one's told in dual perspective, and our main female protagonist, Amelia, is a scavenger, so she is illegally sent to this new planet. She's supposed to find any kind of valuable tech, any kind of like artifacts, anything that could be sold for like a profit on the black market. And then our other main character, Julian, is a scientist. He's there with like a research operation and they're studying the tech that was left behind. Then the two end up having to team up because they get separated from their individual missions and are actually on the run together on this planet, and they go through all these temples and there's booby traps. Very much kind of like Indiana Jones, just in space. Which was like the whole reason why I was so excited to read this book, because I was like, dude, we're doing tomb raiding, we're stealing things, there's booby traps, this is awesome. But it actually took me a really long time to get into this book. I read this book for like 3 months. The first half of the book is really slow. Then the second half, once I got just over halfway through the book, I finished the second half in like a day, like in one sitting. The ending was just so fast-paced and so gripping, and there was so much action, and all the things that I was looking for in the book happened in the second half. I'm very intrigued for the second book. I will definitely be picking it up. I just hope that the pacing's a little bit better because I felt like it was really off in this book. Also, while reading this book, I could just visualize it as a movie. I feel like it already has this movie rights sold to a production studio, but this would have made a fantastic movie. I almost feel like the story is better suited for a movie. I hope this gets adapted because I think it would be, if it's done right, this would be a fantastic Lara Croft meets Temple Run meets Indiana Jones mashup. I ended up giving this book a 3.75 out of 5 stars. So after that, I finally finished Winter by Marissa Meyer. This was the year I was telling myself I'm going to finish the Lunar Chronicles, and I finally did it. I listened to this one on audiobook. A lot of people when this first came out didn't much care for it because I feel like they compared it a lot to a lot of other books that were on the market at the time. Like, I know there's some things in here that are kind of Hunger Games-esque in relation to like the Capitol. Because it's been so many years, I was like cleansed from all the hype and I went into it and I loved this book. Rebecca Soler does such a fantastic job with these audiobooks that there's no other way to enjoy the series. Like, yes, they're good and enjoyable in print form, but the real experience is in audio. If you ever have the chance to listen to this in audio, I highly recommend it because it is just so perfectly done. Like, I loved everything about this last book. Loved how our 8 or 9 main characters were continually split into different groups. Like, we didn't have 3 or so characters working together throughout the whole book. We'd have whoever was best for the situation get put in that situation. It was never the same characters together, so we got a lot of really good character dynamics and inter-character like relations, because they were always with different people and you were always seeing different tensions arise, different conflicts arise, and I loved that. I also felt like this is one of the best conclusions I've ever read for a series. I felt like everything was so very well resolved. Nothing felt left to the imagination or unresolved. Felt like this showed enough time in the future that you really got to see, okay, this character is a ambassador now, or this person is a relation for this, or like this person's doing this. Like, you got to see what all the characters were up to and how they were fulfilling their new roles within the society after the war, and I just really appreciated that, because I always wonder, well, what's happening now that the war is ended? And it definitely solidified the Lunar Chronicles as one of my favorite series, which means I ended up giving Winter a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I finished was Unravel Me by Tahereh Mafi, which is the second book in the Shatter Me series. I also wanted to continue this series this year. This is another one of those books that took me longer than I wanted to read. I was a little underwhelmed by this book, to be quite honest. You hear so much about Juliet and Warner and their relationship and just like the chemistry and the tension and everything, and I was expecting a lot more than what I got. I just like don't understand why they like each other so much. I don't feel like she ever did a really good job building that. When it was happening and progressing in this book, I was like, but why? I don't understand Warner's like obsession with Juliet. I do not get this like connection and understanding of her and like wanting to be there for her and like this protectiveness. I don't understand where it comes from. I don't know why he likes her so much. I don't get it. I don't feel like there was any real like solid basis to it or like explanation. Maybe I just missed it in Shatter Me, which is why I reread Shatter Me in the first place, because I felt like I missed the whole conversation, dialogue between Juliet and Warner when I read it the first time, and I'm like, well, I must have just missed it. I'm gonna reread it. But then in rereading it, I don't feel like I gained anything more from it anyways. I just don't understand why people like them so much. Additionally, a lot of people compare Akamath to this book, so I was expecting a whole lot more, especially if you're gonna compare this to Akamath. Like, dude, this was like a watered, lukewarm version of Akamath. Maybe if I had read them in reverse order, like if I would read this first when I was younger, maybe I would have felt differently. The relationship, the steamy tension relationship that I was expecting, I did not get. And that's the whole reason why I even continued with this series. I did enjoy the characters more in this book. I felt like they were more fleshed out and they had more purpose and didn't feel like just props to Juliet's internal monologue. I do intend to read Ignite Me because I want to see this bathtub scene that everybody talks about so much, and that's the reason why I'm going to read Ignite Me, so I hope it's worth it. And so for that reason, I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in, we're still in April, right? April, yes. Wires and Nerves Volume 1 by Marissa Meyer. It's illustrated by Doug Holgate. This is the first graphic novel in the Lunar Chronicles series. So this takes place after winter, before the epilogue in Stars Above. I am not a graphic novel person at all. I have not liked a single one that I have read up until this point. I loved this graphic novel. I thought it was so well done. We follow Aiko and she's on a journey to track down all these rogue special operatives. Aiko is just one of my favorite characters. She's so sassy and she's so full of personality and so like lively and vivacious, and I felt like she was so well portrayed in this, and I just thought that the dialogue was so well done and it felt kind of like a book but with pictures involved. Like it felt more like a illustrated Lunar Chronicle book than a graphic novel. The artwork in this book is all very monochromatic. It's all tones of blue. I would have liked to see this in color. Then again, I feel like the blue added like a simplicity to it. I don't know. I didn't hate it. I love that it even expands further upon what's happening after the war. And I end up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. And after that one, I went right into Wires and Nerves Volume 2, Gone Rogue. And this one picks up right where the first one leaves off. I loved it just as much as the first one. I thought that the artwork was a little off kilter in comparison comparison to the first one because they did get a new illustrator, and I also felt like in both cases they didn't quite hit the mark on what the characters are supposed to look like. But regardless, the humor was still on point, the jokes, the dialogue, the characterization, like I still felt like it was also very authentic to the novels, which was the whole point of it. I mean, it was about the characters and this new journey they were on. Do I think though that this is like a necessary thing for the series? No, you could end with winter and you'd be perfectly fine. I don't think that you need either of these graphic novels to get the full story. And I will say that what happens in Gone Rogue does spoil you for the epilogue in Stars Above. So with that being said, I also gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I finished in April was Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. Holy crap. There was so much Marissa Meyer in April. I didn't even realize that. This I had been reading sporadically throughout the entire series, so I didn't read all of this in April. I just read the very last story in April. I had been reading the series in the order that Trina from Between Chapters had come up with, so I will link that on the screen if you want to check it out. I really wish that I would have written like a little review for each of the novellas after I finished them, because I can't remember my thoughts on every single one of them because I've been reading this since like October. But I do remember that in general I enjoyed pretty much everything that I read from here. We follow all the different characters before the events of their stories, after the events of their stories, like their individual books. It ties certain characters into others, and you see backstories for some that you don't get in the novel. So I do think that if you really like the Lunar Chronicles, this is a good addition to read because you get to learn more about your favorite characters. You get to see a cute retelling of The Little Mermaid, which I thought was really precious with androids. Again, there is the epilogue for the series in here as well. But overall, I really enjoyed this. I can't remember there being a single story in here that I didn't like or that I thought was boring. And in the end, I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. And then the final book that I read in April was actually another reread for me, and that was Illuminae by Amie Kaufman and Kristoff. I have a whole review on this that I will link on the screen, but I wanted to do a reread before I went into Obsidio. I really wanted to listen to this on audiobook because I knew that there were sound effects and that there were like movie style effects in it, and it just sounded like such a fantastic audiobook. Plus, the way that it's written, I just felt like it would translate to audio really well, being that it's a lot of interviews, a lot of like recordings, a lot of surveillance footage. I was not let down. This is a fantastic audiobook. My favorite thing actually about this as an audiobook is that there are these scenes in here where they're like fight scenes. Let me find a page where I can give you a good example. Where it's like this, and it's all the different people who are part of like the space battle, and they're yelling at each other. It's kind of hard to follow listening to the pages like this one here, because every book has a page like this. In the audio, it was just so much better because they were all talking over each other, and you could hear the radio commissions like, ooh, mayday, mayday, help me, send fire, boom, and there were explosions, and it was just super cool. It's like listening to a movie. I felt like I was listening to Star Wars. It's just a very different experience than reading it in the print form. It did such a good job with these audiobooks. I was so freaking impressed. I, again, gave this a 5 out of 5 stars because I enjoyed it just as much as the first time, and I actually forgot the big major plot twist of this book, so when I was listening to it, I was like, holy shit. And it like blew my mind all over again, and it was amazing. So that was the last book that I read in April. I read a ton of books, and I don't even know how that happened because it was the month right before finals. So let's go ahead and talk about the TV shows that I watched. The Originals came back for its final season. I think it's the 5th season, and we've had another time jump. I feel like the Originals every season there's like some massive time jump. And now we are following Hope as a teenager, and she's at the boarding school that was founded in the last season of The Vampire Diaries, which was super cool because I had been waiting for that moment since that happened at the end of The Vampire Diaries. I'd been waiting for this crossover. We're getting to see our main characters as parents to teenagers. So it's like a weird situation because you're used to watching the characters as teenagers and then they happen to have parents. But here it's like your characters were teenagers and now they're parents of teenagers. So you're seeing like the teenager perspective again, which we haven't seen in a couple of seasons since like early Vampire Diary days, but we're seeing it through the eyes of our characters who are now adults with kids. It's very weird, but I really enjoy it. I've only watched the first couple of episodes of this season. I'm really enjoying it. I'm bitter sad, that's not a word. I'm excited for it to end because I feel like the original doesn't really have anywhere else to go. I feel like we've exhausted these characters. I am excited because they released news that we're going to be following Hope and then Lizzie and Josie, who were the twins from the Vampire Diaries, when they're at the boarding school as teenagers. It's called Legacies. So I'm excited to be back in Mystic Falls and back with like a teenage group of kids. I'm also excited that this world is not ending quite yet because I wasn't really ready to let it go quite yet. I don't really understand like the big overarching issue of this series, of this season quite yet, aside from the fact that none of our main characters can be together in the same room as a result of what happened at the end of the 4th season. And then there's like some angry vampires who want to cause trouble. Like, I mean, that's every season though. So I'll be interested to see where this season goes and how it sets up for Legacies, which is coming out in the fall. But that's all that I watched TV-wise for this month. So let's go ahead and talk about the movies that I saw in the theaters. And coincidentally, I actually didn't see a single movie in theaters. I'm trying to think back to April, and like the one movie that stands out to me that I would have seen was The Avengers, but I actually didn't see that until May, which I think means I didn't see any movies in April. That is it. Those are all of the books, movies, and TV shows that I consumed in the month of April. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'll talk to you very soon. Bye!